All right, so this is our World War II review as we build up to the Cold War. This is the stuff that we started to talk about in class. So hopefully in your class we mentioned the rise of dictators in Europe and Asia. So as we build up to World War II, before we start fighting, what we have is dictators taking over really around the world. And these dictators rise largely out of the failures of the League of Nations to establish peace after World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, which was, from France and England's perspective, a way to punish Germany for World War II. Okay, so we've got dictators that are coming up: Stalin in the Soviet Union, Mussolini in Italy, Hitler in Germany, Francisco Franco in Spain, and then Hideki Tojo in Japan as the prime minister. Now you still have Hirohito is the emperor of Japan, but Tojo really is seen as the dictator to rise there. So you've got all of these dictators that are going to rise primarily out of economic pressure. So there are poor economies around the world. People are looking for an answer, and these guys rise up as ways to answer the problems. When we talk about the Treaty of Versailles, the Treaty of Versailles made Germany accept multiple things that's going to help Hitler rise to power. So Germany had to accept full responsibility for the war. They had to pay war reparations to France and England, which they weren't going to be able to pay anyways. And on top of not being able to pay them, they had to get rid of territory, including colonial territory, which really stripped them of any ability to pay France and England back. So they took away their colonies around the world who produced money for them, so now they can't pay it back that way. So accept responsibility for the war, pay war reparations to France and England. They had to give up territory around the world, and then they also had to significantly reduce the size of their military. So it was easy for Hitler to look back and blame the Treaty of Versailles for the problems that Germany was experiencing, and so that's happening around the world. Obviously, we know he also is going to blame the Jews for problems with the German economy. So you have these guys that are going to rise up, and this is going to be a theme that we talked about this in class. This is going to be a theme for us as we talk about the United States and the Soviet Union in the Cold War, is that in areas where there is economic trouble, it's easier for dictators to come in and take over than it would be an area that was financially stable. So these countries suffering from financial problems are going to be subject to being taken over by these dictators. Okay. So in Europe, as we move into the war, we know that, let's backtrack, we know that these dictators rise up. Hitler's going to come in, and we talked in class, at least in some of the classes, about appeasement. So Hitler rises specifically in Germany. He starts to attack, and you have this concept of appeasement. Okay? So Germany starts to attack, and France and England sit back, and Hitler expands, and they don't want to do anything because they don't want to go to war. I gave you guys the example of the little kid throwing a fit in the aisle at Walmart because he wants candy. If the parents give in to him, so he stops throwing the fit, he'll stop throwing his fit for a time, but the next time he's in that situation, he's going to throw his fit again because he's learned that gets him candy. Well, Hitler's in a similar situation. Hitler has realized that he can go in and expand and then kind of put up this front like, oh, well, that's all that we wanted, and continue to expand. So France and England are so desperate to avoid war that they appease Hitler. They let him basically go in and take free people over so that they can avoid war. And then he's going to use blitzkrieg, especially going through Poland and France, and he has this non-aggression pact going on with the Soviet Union. So he agrees at the beginning of the war not to fight with the Soviet Union, so he doesn't have to fight a two-front war. Let's look at that real fast. Okay, so we should have our map pulling up, maybe, if Google Maps is going to work. All right, sorry for the delay. So this is a modern day map, but if we look at Germany's here, okay, Germany blaming France and England here for the damages of the Treaty of Versailles. We know that they're already expanding into this area, France and England. This is where we talk about appeasement. Germany's expanding, growing in this region. France and England are telling them, hey, stop, don't do that, and they are going to say okay, and then they're going to expand more. Well, Germany also signs this non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union because they know that eventually Germany here is going to be fighting to the west with France and England. They don't want to also be fighting to the east with the Soviet Union, which is Russia. Okay? So Germany doesn't want that. They don't want to fight the Russia in the east and France and England in the west. France and England in the west. And they want to get Poland pretty quickly. So they signed this non-aggression pact. They invade Poland. They split Poland up. Germany takes the western half of Poland. The Soviet Union takes the eastern half of Poland. And then Germany's going to go through the Netherlands, Belgium, into France. So that's going to kind of kick off World War II. That's going to bring France and England into the war. And then, like I said, at that point, Germany had signed this truce with the Soviet Union, so they weren't fighting. All right. So we talked about this idea of appeasement, that they're letting Hitler expand. The United States at the same time is clinging to what we call isolationism, and that was a historical theme for the U.S. to avoid international affairs. After World War I, the United States is very, very much set on staying isolated. The problem is that the war effort, the United States building war supplies, trading them, is helping the United States pull out of World War II. So as the war goes on, the United States is realizing that isolationism is not a possibility. Because if we stop trading with England, then we're essentially choosing to side with Germany. Because if we don't trade with England, then England is going to fall to Germany. If we trade with England, then we are choosing England's side because we're helping them defeat Germany. So while we want to stay isolated, we more importantly want that trading partner to pull us out of World War II. So it becomes almost impossible for us to stay isolated because we're going to make the war supplies and trade. As the war goes on, then we're going to soften our idea of isolationism. We're going to slowly pull out of that with cash and carry, lend-lease, and that's going to lead us into the Battle of the Atlantic. So we start dealing more and more with Great Britain. Germany gets more and more frustrated about that. And then in the Battle of the Atlantic, we're going to end up getting into this war, a naval war with Germany. Okay, what's going on in America during this time then? We have, as America enters the war after Pearl Harbor, we've got some serious wartime adjustments that are going on, where the government is taking on more and more of the private part of American life, private business, to control the war effort. We have something called the Great Migration, which is going to be really important for us as we move down, especially like into civil rights. And this is when African Americans from the South moved to northern urban areas for work. And as they moved into those urban areas, white Americans moved from the urban areas into suburban areas, and we called that white flight. So African Americans moved from the south to the north, white Americans moved out of the urban area to the suburban areas, and we get a lot of rundown inner city places, and we'll talk about that as we build from that concept to the civil rights movement. And then, like I said, we're dealing with a recovering economy. It's important to remember that we're in the Great Depression until World War II pulls us out of it. So we need to trade with Great Britain, and we need to trade even with the Soviet Union to help us pull out of the Great Depression. All right, some major events to hit. Hopefully we are familiar with all of these for World War II. Pearl Harbor, Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. That's going to be the event that brings us into World War II. Japanese internment. Because of our distrust for the Japanese after the attack on Pearl Harbor, we are putting American citizens of Japanese descent into internment camps, similar to what we would consider concentration camps, but they're not death camps. So we're holding them there, we're taking away their rights. They haven't done anything wrong necessarily. We're keeping them there to protect our war efforts that we claim. So we took their property away, forced them to work, but they're not established to kill Japanese Americans. D-Day, we know, is the invasion of Normandy, which is German-occupied Europe, so Germany is controlling France at that point. We invade to try and kick out Germany. Stalingrad is going to be Germany's first major defeat in World War II, and Germany had been kind of mowing through Russia. At Stalingrad, Russia's finally going to make their stand. Germany runs into a really harsh Russian winter, and that's going to help Russia push Germany back, and that's the first big turning point. It's Germany's first big loss. The Battle of the Bulge is where Germany's going to make their last push in World War II. This is kind of a bend but don't break thing that happens where the American or the Allied lines bend, they get pushed back, which creates this big bulge, but it doesn't break. They end up pushing back, and after the Battle of the Bulge, then the Allies, the United States, France, England, from that side, from the western side, are on the offensive, pushing back towards Germany. The Holocaust, again, is the German plan kind of that final solution to create the master race by killing Jews, Gypsies, African German citizens, so people that are black, people that are disabled, anybody that has any problems that don't fit that idea of blonde hair, blue-eyed Aryan race are being exterminated through the final solution. And then the Manhattan Project, this is the development of the atomic bomb that ends up getting dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And President Truman went through with that plan with the idea that it was going to save more lives and really was the only effective way to end World War II. So at that point, we'd already defeated Germany. We were focusing on Japan. We drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders, and World War II at that point is going to come to a close.